Hi, welcome back to Accounting 2. We are moving on to Chapter 12, and we're talking about preparing payroll records. So I need you on page 338 of your textbook. As we take a look, we are defining accounting terms related to payroll. We're identifying accounting practices related to payroll records. We are going to complete a payroll time card. We're going to calculate payroll taxes. We are going to complete a payroll register and an employee's earnings record, and we are going to prepare payroll checks. We take a look at our key terms, ideas that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about salary. We're going to talk about pay period. We're going to talk about payroll, total earnings, payroll taxes, withholding allowance, Social Security tax, Medicare tax. We're going to talk about a tax base. At some chunk of time, you will not be expected to pay some taxes. Payroll register, net pay, and an employee's earnings record. I need you to jump forward to page 340, and we're going to start talking about employees. Now, employees are broken into two pieces. You have your salaried employee, you have your hourly employee. I would argue most of you working a job right now, you show up for 10 hours, you get paid for 10 hours. You show up for 20 hours, you get paid for 20 hours. Myself, as a teacher, I'm a salaried employee, meaning I get paid the same amount regardless of how many hours it takes me. Doing this whole distance learning type thing, I may be coming in next week over spring break. Okay, the school is not going to pay me more money because I'm going in over spring break. I may come in on a Saturday and work on some homework, grade some tests, prepare some stuff, doesn't matter. I don't get paid a dime more. As a school employee, as a coach, as a wrestling coach, I don't get paid any more money for any of the extra work I do. They say, here is your job. Here is your salary for that job. You get paid this much money to do this job. That's a salary type employee. I also work at Albion Ridges Golf Course in the summer. So there, I punch in at 5:30 in the morning. I work from 5:30 to 8:30. I get paid for those 3 hours. If I end up staying a little bit later because they need me to take out the trash or maybe mow a fairway or do something different, I'll get paid more. I don't show up on a particular Saturday. I don't get paid for that work. So hourly versus salaried is a big idea to understand. Some businesses do this. A couple, 2-3 years ago, we were building our home and I moved back, live with my mom, my family, the whole family. Mrs. Clem, I, the two kids moved back in with grandma, and we lived there for the summer while they were building our house out in Stockholm Township. And I worked at a golf course there, Creeksbend, and they actually had an old school time card machine where you grab your time card, you'd have your name on it, and you'd punch in and it'd go chunk, chunk, and it'd timestamp it. And you turn around when you punch out, you'd chunk, chunk again, and it'd timestamp it and say, all right, I showed up at 0600 and I punched out at 0900. That was my 3 hours of time. Working at the golf course now, I do that electronically. I show up, I type in my employee code. That employee code says I started at this point in time, and it calculates it. In theory, could calculate to the minute. I doubt any employer is going to pay you to the minute, but it would pay you probably every half of an hour, every quarter of an hour. Doubt it would pay you to the minute. So we're talking salary, we're talking hourly type employees. You also have to understand, when are you going to get paid? Are you an employee who gets paid every 2 weeks? Now, if you get paid every 2 weeks, that means you're going to get 26 paychecks in a full year versus getting paid twice a month. Well, 12 months in a year, twice a month, you get 24 paychecks. When I was working at Prudential Life Insurance, I would get paid every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, I would get a paycheck, meaning there were a couple months, 2 of them, where I would get 3 paychecks in a month. And you kind of felt like, hey, it's pretty sweet. I get a little bit extra money. Well, not really. I was still a salaried employee. I was still getting the same amount of money I was going to get, but they were going to cut me their check, 26 times in a calendar year versus 24 times. As a teacher now, I get paid the 15th of the month, and I get paid either the first or the last day of the month, depending on how you want to look at it. 2 times a month, 12 months a year, 24. Circling back to the hourly stuff, we're talking payroll, we're talking time cards. Okay, so as you take a look at your time card, here's an example for Hobby Shack. It's employee number 3. Here's the employee name. Here is the pay period. So it's going to be December 1 to December 15th. You have the time you're punching in. You have the time you're punching out. Okay. We're not going to worry to the minute. We're just going to round up and say, well, they punched in at 8 a.m. They punched out at noon. That's 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to 12. They worked 4 hours. They took a 1-hour lunch. They worked from roughly 1 to 5. 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. Okay, 4 and 4. This guy worked an 8-hour day. As I take a look at my second slide here, I move down to third day of the week, right? Punched in roughly at 8, punched out at noon, took my hour lunch, punched back in at 1, worked till 5. Went and had dinner. I came back in for some overtime. 7 o'clock at night, I punched in. I punched out at 9:30, right? So 4 hours here for my regular earnings, 4 hours here for my regular earnings. Here is my extra time or my overtime. Well, 2.5 hours. Now, each employer would tell you track it to every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, every full hour. I doubt anybody says track it to every minute, okay? Looks like they kind of separated it out here. And again, 8 to noon, hour lunch, 1 to 5. Came back at 6:30, worked till 8:30, 2 hours, right? So calculate the regular hours first. Calculate the number of overtime hours as it applies. Go ahead and add your overtime hours together. This person worked 88 regular hours, 4.5 hours of overtime. They worked a total of 92 hours that 2-week pay period.